is María Eugenia Sánchez. My role is made of Miguel Piantedosi, Sebastián Mejías, Paola Montilla, Fabiana Perez, and Frenette Soto. We are going to talk to you about of the crystal generations. Why do they call it crystal generations? The crystal generation is intercoined by the Spanish philosopher Montserrat Herrera, and contrary to what is believed, does not refer to millennials, but not specifically to centennials, but rather to the children of Generation X, those born between the late 80s and 60s, who are currently reaching 18 years of age. The last characteristic that is attributed to the concept speaks of the fragility or the way in which they are broken inside if something does not turn out the way as they wanted. The analysis carried out of these young people says they are so unstable or insecure because their parents, who live through time of great deprivation, insisted of getting ahead to give them everything and that we lack nothing like they did at the time. However, use out their crazy for not putting up with anything and complaining about everything. They are people who handle technology by heart. A world where everything is free of ephemeral. They are creative, individual, and develop a higher degree of sensitivity for these young people who are going through adolescence. The family or institutional authority is the other and generate rejections, since it's the same authority that accused them of not having tolerance for criticisms and frustrations.
Today, I want to consider two generational them from the perspective of different movements that has been evident, but especially those that point out different aspects of life as offensive and inciting hatred, disrespect, or multiple forms of dislike. This generation is living in war. A dog of 10 children can no longer go out to the street, to the store, to the park for fear of insecurity. Because every day, an average of 3 girls, boys, or adolescents, and mother and 4 disappear with total impunity. So what we are having is a sedentary life, let's say in closed apartments or houses, which alone exposure to a screen, and they are socializing and making their living through these channels. Because schools are not being safe in many ways either. It's not that the recurrent generational is a more fragile generation. They are with fear, with many emotions that we probably did not have before, while obviously lived in calmer societies, in which we call play to the strict without problem. Nobody that no longer happens.
Young people of these generations tend to be more entrepreneurial than previous generations. They were born in a technological age where they are allowed to use different communications alternatives, news channels, environments, and virtual platforms to work. Access new professional offerings and do everyday activities. This helps them to have easy and unlimited access to information and knowledge, which motivates around a quarter of young people to have greater autonomy to learn on their own. In this way, their audio-visual skills prevail a lot. They are much self-taught and creative. Their attitude makes them constantly moving, easily adapts to new environments, sharing spaces, and does not become standard. This motivates them to be critical, questions everything, and have their talent to take advantage of new opportunities. This new generation grew up under adversity in a environment where abuse was very strong from very social segments. So they are people who have used the means to raise their voices in the face of various issues of abuse that were previously normal or simply ignored.
Much has been said that Generation Z is the crystal generation, the generation that takes offense at everything, that can stand anything. But it may also be the generation that got tired of being permissive with customs that endorse misogyny, xenophobia, racism, and labor exploitation, like explains Judy Lipson, professional counselor. It is a reality that the community of the last century was a society with very fair belief, where the world seeming not to be questioned. It is here that Generation Z appears, the generation that discusses everything. The so-called crystal generation has adopted causes for which to fight, and some of these social phenomena has been transformed thanks to them. Young people are wanting to organize ourselves. There has been the first sign of concern. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement, it is fights against racism and police violence, as well as the demonstration of women demanding their right to decide about their body and health. All this so that we can live in a society free of prejudice. So we can be made of glass, as the others say, but we are helping.
The crystal generation is known as the generation that takes offense at everything. But according to writer Eric Vargas, the fight for human rights was practically born in the digital age, and this is the era in which the crystal generation has lived. Because of technology, the exchange of information has become more accessible. This is one of the reasons for this generation to determine on their own what is good and what is not. So, having information that is accessible has made us realize that there are certain things, even from past generations, that have to change and improve. Previously, it was not common to see women in the workplace. Being a person of color was perceived as less than. People were judged based on their sexual orientation, and even the opinion of young people was not relevant. This had to change, and in some cases, has to change. It is likely that there are many events that the crystal generation has not lived through while past generations have. That is why what seems normal to past generations, the crystal generation doesn't perceive it the same way. So, categorizing a generation by the way they react to the unknown is not appropriate, especially because most of the things that cause their distress are human rights violations.
The separation by temporalities is very useful for social essences. So they can classify us with the same political, economic, cultural, and social paradigms that belong to a certain age range. We all know that we belong to some generations that are the boomers, the millennials, Generation Z, and Generation X. A generation can be determined by this sociological time, which means that the generation can last 20 years or a century, depends mostly on its belief system that so much remains useful and meaningful with the real
world and its advances. Lately, the third generation of Crystal is being used to mock the younger generations when they point out homophobic, racist, or other practice that previous generations may not agree with. Can we really say that the generation is weaker than others just because they question all practice and are more socially aware than their ancestors? Uh, Young people are the future, and it is surely worth listening to what they have to say if we want to be part of that future. Crystal generation is a pejorative term used by some people when minors point out a problematic practice that they simply don't care about.